Okay, Emery, let's pick back up with you. Tell us a little bit about your validity strategies.
Well, I would second one of the things that Angie talked about, which is the portfolio process. I just think that's so critical to student learning and was something that we built into all of our courses at the College in New Rochelle, where students actually had to do an experiential project. So they had to do something outside of just the reading and the learning resources that were in the classroom, and they had to take those and integrate those into the content of the course. And we would start on that at the very beginning of the semester so that students in the first couple of weeks had to design that project. And then that project would build on itself over the course of the semester. And all of the objectives that were in the course would get tied into that as that project progressively evolved. And one of the things that we always insisted on doing in this is that at the end of the semester, that project had to be presented to other students, which, of course, if you're doing it in class, you're doing an oral presentation in front of class. If you're doing it online, you're doing it on Zoom. But I think that really reinforced something because it broke down that structure of you're just responding to the instructor, you're responding to the teacher. Instead, you're responding to all of your colleagues in class, all of your fellow students who by the end of the class are empowered enough to be critical and to also assess your work on that. And so students would end up doing an exceptional job just because they were having to do it for everybody else. They were having to basically do a public presentation as opposed to just something for their professor in their class.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I think one of the things that you'll see over and over again in a lot of the different things that we're doing is portfolios are great. There's just different assessments that lend well to matching your objectives to and tying together. I want to move to the next question, not quickly, but we're kind of trying to keep these under 5 minutes. So the next question is, can you share a strategy of how you match your assessments and your objectives? And I'll kind of start this one off. One of the things I like to do is to, when I'm building the course, look at the objectives and then start thinking directly from the objective, what is that assessment? And then I actually use a Google Sheet to do this. So that way I can see them on each line to say, okay, does this objective match the assessment directly? So if I'm looking at a student describing something, if they're going to build a portfolio, what are the different elements that I want them to see to make sure that wording matches, kind of line for line, so that way everything is tied together and students can see it. So I take the full course objectives, break them down into mini objectives, and then make sure the assignments align to those, and then go back up to the major objective to make sure I've accomplished it. And I'll share that sheet with you guys so you guys can see it in the future. So Angie, tell us about how you do it. What's your strategy?
If I can share really quickly, I have some examples of how I do this too. So I do the same thing. I have those overall course objectives and I break those down into the weekly or lesson objectives, which you can see I have some here. And then as you can see, I go through and I align it to the different course content, the different modules, but then I also align it so here if they need to explain something, they're explaining why using attributes is important, that's a discussion topic. So I can assess whether they can do that or not. If I want them to create a web page, their weekly hands-on assignment will allow them to evidence those skills in that as well. So I do the same thing. I make sure I have assignments that align with what I'm asking them to do.
Emery, would you like to add something to that one?
Sure. Yeah. One of the things that I would do is actually go back and take a look at my objectives and break them down in terms of the verbs, in terms of what they're asking students or what the activity is. And I will have objectives that will have recall or recognition, others that will be interpret or classify, others that will be apply or implement, or others that might be analyze. And all those are part of the course. And then I'll take a look at my assessments and go, how do they fit with that? Because obviously a recall or recognition objective, the only thing that's good with that is going to be like an objective test. But when you start to talk about interpret or classify or summarize, then you're going to look at papers, exams, discussions. When you get to apply or implementation, then you might want to think about case studies or student projects. And so I'll go back and look at those assessments and make sure that they align with each of the objectives so that I'm asking students to demonstrate their knowledge in the right way. Because otherwise they're going to be, what you don't want to do is set the objective on one level and then do the assessment on a separate level on something different.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. I hope you've learned something in this section. We'll see you in the next one.